Welcome to the regular meeting of the Arlington School Committee on Thursday, April 25th, 2019. I'm Len Carden. I'm chair of the school committee, and I want to copy the select board and just occasionally have each member introduce themselves. So I'm Len Carden, chair.
I'm Jane Morgan.
Paul Schlichtman.
Jeff Thielman.
Jennifer Seuss.
Christy Allison Ampe.
And our union representative is Jason Levy. And thank you all.
And Bill isn't here.
Oh, yes, and our member,
yes.
Bill Hayner, is not feeling well and is unable to attend tonight. So the first thing we need to do tonight is our hearing on school choice. This is required by Massachusetts law to have this annual hearing, and every year we need to adopt this policy. It is the policy of the school district not to admit non-resident students under the terms and conditions of the Interdistrict School Choice Law, MGL 7612. This decision must be reaffirmed annually prior to June 1st by a vote of the school committee following a public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak on this matter? Oh, I guess, should I have a motion to open the hearing?
Well, you're in the hearing, so you need motions to close the hearing.
All right, can I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Unanimous?
Great job in the hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the policy that the school district will not admit non-resident students under the terms and conditions of the Interdistrict School Choice Law, MGL 7612, and that we notify the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education of our hearing and this vote.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Do you want to say for the school year of,
For the school year 2019-2020.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It's also unanimous. All right. So as we open our meeting, I would like to take a moment to recognize the recent death of Dick Fanning, a longtime member of the Arlington Finance Committee. For many years, Dick covered the school budget for the Finance Committee, working closely with our budget subcommittee, our admin team, and attending many committee and subcommittee meetings in that role. Arlington and its public schools are better due to his service. We are thankful for his service and extend our condolences to his family and friends. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay. So, is there any public participation? No public participation. I guess we will proceed with meeting the administrators. Athletic directors?
Yes,
You
our
wanna go first?
our new athletic director, not so new anymore. It's end of April. Dr. Stanley Vieira.
I should just note for the committee that the Japanese visitors are not in the building yet, so.
Thank you very much for having me. I got to be very truthful. This is quite intimidating. I've never been in front of this guy. So,
Capitol Hill hearing, yes.
but again, thank you so much for having me tonight.
So what we have been asked, when we have new administrators in our district, is to come in and have a chance for them to introduce themselves, for you to ask some questions. And we have actually had this scheduled several times. There's just been different conflicts, and it keeps getting pushed off. So I'm very glad that this evening we're able to finally have Dr. Vieira with us. And he can talk a little bit about what his experience has been so far this year, and then it's open for questions from anyone.
Sure, I'll be brief. It's been an extraordinary experience. They say when you take a new position, sometimes it's better when you hit the ground running. That's really what I kind of did. I came here in August, and there wasn't a lot of time to think. It was more react. But in a way, it actually forced me to learn rather quickly. The one thing that I felt fairly confident about when I got here was the support of the community, and that came in pretty loud and clear. The parents here are wonderful. Everything from running concessions to doing our banquets and coming to games in the freezing cold, with snacks for their kids and for the teammates. It's been an amazing experience in that regard. We have wonderful coaches here, amazing resources in our administration. So it's been an unbelievable experience. I just jotted down a couple of accomplishments this year from some of our teams. I won't be too lengthy, but just I'm amazed at how hard our kids work, knowing that they're not only playing sports and full-time students, but they're also in bands and recitals and swimming and karate, and it's pretty extraordinary to watch how busy their plates are. But just this year alone, since I got here, we've had 4 Middlesex League champions, our boys cross country, our wrestling, and our boys and girls ice hockey teams, which I thought were really amazing accomplishments. Our boys soccer team was bestowed the honor of a Division II North champions and made it to a state title. Came a little short. If you went to the game, you saw our and it's a super long season, but our sideline, it was like a mash unit. We had so many kids with arm slings, and they were so beat up at the end, and it was amazing to watch how hard they worked. So from that respect, it's been an amazing year. I couldn't begin to tell you all of the all-star selections we've made. It's just countless. It's amazing how great our kids are. I'd like to sit here and tell you about Ryan Osting and how great he is, but I have several pages of his accomplishments. I'm guessing you probably don't want to hear tonight, but it's pretty astonishing when you get a generational athlete like Ryan Osting and what he's been able to do at our school. So just a couple of things as far as, what we've accomplished this year. But again, to speak to Dr. Bodie's first point, it's been an amazing year, and I'm super grateful and appreciative of the opportunity given to me.
Well, we are also very pleased that you've joined us as well. He has, through this year, has been wonderful to work with, and I know that this is true with all of our the people that we have to collaborate with in town. And it's really, I know you felt like you jumped in the deep end of the pool, but at the same time, you have been swimming very well.
I appreciate it. I think one of the things you learn very quickly is you have to understand how to build relationships. We're dealing with, whether it be DPW, community ed, our police, our firemen, our ambulance service, whatever it is we're dealing with, there's both internal and external stakeholders, so to speak. So there's so many people that you have to work with. So building relationships is really a key part of this position. And to be honest with you, everybody's been wonderful. I joke with everybody and I tell people, nobody has said no to me, which is really nice, So I've had a lot of...
Came here.
Yeah. I've had a lot of requests, and it's been an amazing part of my position. So yes, it's been wonderful.
Okay. There are questions, comments? Dr. Seuss?
Just a question about what you hope to accomplish next year. Is there sort of any new, major initiative, or
Sure.
You've spoken very positively, but is there something you'd like to work on that's potentially a problem, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the things we started the process of changing some things. So, for example, our Arlington A, is going through. We're actually doing a contest currently with our students regarding changing the A, and the reason being is because we've been using the Alabama A the last couple of years, and regretfully, our vendor has told us that it's a trademark infringement, and we can no longer use that. So, which I look at that as an opportunity to kind of rebrand, so to speak. It'd be kind of great to roll out a new A, and with that comes along a new gear, and over time, the uniforms and everything else. So that's one of the things we're looking to do. And then just to piggyback on that, just a kind of a branding of our program. If you go outside, and I know you're all super busy, but if you go outside and you look at our softball field and you look at our turf field, Pierce Field, you'll now see we have beautiful new banners that clearly mark who we are and what our school is. And I think when you drive up, it's really, for me, it's breathtaking. I love it. It's because you get there and you have no confusion as to where you are. Sometimes you go to high school fields, and for whatever reason, there's no branding. And if I was to blindfold somebody and put somebody in the middle, they wouldn't know where they are. And for me, I really want to make sure our kids have that kind of pride about where they are, where they're going. So the branding piece is a big piece that going forward we're going to change. And for me, it's a constant evaluation of our coaches and how to make them better. To hopefully give our students and our parents a richer experience. So that's a work in progress. That will always be something that we're doing. And then beyond that is educating our coaches on how to be, not just better coaches, but better mentors, and that's really important as well. Teaching our kids how to be better leaders, understanding our kids' needs and making sure they're going to the right colleges. It's really important for us, So those are always ongoing things that we do year in, year out. Building a more robust captain's council. We have something in place. The idea is to do more in the way of building and getting more initiatives, more community service, and getting a bigger imprint in our community. So that's something that we're looking to do as well. So I could go on all night, I apologize, but just to give you a couple of things.
Mr. Slickman?
Yeah, I never realized we had a problem with Alabama until I wore my Arlington hat in Florida. And some guy walked up to me and says, "Why are you Alabama?" And no, I'm from Arlington, Massachusetts. But no, I love the stories. I love the fact that we have a lot of participation in sports in Arlington. We've got a very high rate. And sort of the question I have for you, having been out with our students for this amount of time, rather than talking about the high achievers, do you have a student who has touched you because of their heart and soul into what they're doing, maybe second string junior varsity kind of wonderful kid kind of story?
Yeah, I have a few of them. I think the one that really is glaring and comes to mind is we have a football player, Peter Roach. He's a captain, but he's somebody who really has had to work hard for what he's accomplished. He, I think at a very young age, 10 or 11, was diagnosed with diabetes. So he has to actually have the pump on him on a regular basis. And working with our athletic trainer on a day in, day out basis to make sure he's in the right place is an amazing thing to watch. He's not only a football player, but he's also a baseball player. Just recently decided that he's going to Endicott to continue his football, baseball career, and was bestowed an honor, an award for all that he's achieved and what he's had to overcome. So that really, it's a young man that is always ready to do more. And he's been to my office without even knowing me in the beginning. How can I get more involved? How can I do more? I want to give more back. So it's been a joy to be a part of something like that. That's one of a few stories. And beyond that, if you're passing by our football field and by our track, somebody told me when I first got here that track is a sport that you're going to really marvel over. I didn't understand what that meant. No matter what the weather is, when there's snow on our field and nobody else using it, our track kids are outside running. We're close to 170 track kids right now for outdoor. We had about 160 for indoor, and we had well over 150 for cross country. They don't stop running. It's an amazing thing how hard they work. And I think it's one of the sports, because it's a no-cut sport, that a lot of students feel like they have a place, and it's pretty special to watch. So just a couple of things that really stand out about this year.
Thank you.
Of course.
I'm wondering, how you've thought about and are thinking about and are talking to the people who you work with, because, we have these huge cohorts of kids who are coming your way. My son is a kindergartner. He's in a class of, his cohort's like 580 kids. And when I look at that and I look at the graduating classes that you have right now, and I think about sports, I think, gosh, is he going to be able to play on a team by the time he gets to high school? Because he's going to be competing with so many other players, so many other kids. And, I get, it's great that track is a no-cut sport and, maybe he can swim. And but I worry looking at these large cohorts of kids when our sports programs so far don't seem to be evolving, which I don't think they necessarily need to be yet. But, greater and greater cohorts of kids are coming. And I worry about the implications of just class size, not like classroom size, but just the size of the class really impacting kids' abilities to be on and make teams here. And so I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that. It's something, I'm sure it's not solved. I'm not expecting that at this point. It's something that I will ask you again when you come back next year. But if you could speak to that a little bit, that would be helpful.
It's a wonderful question. It really is. One that I probably don't have a great answer for, but I'm going to try my best. I can tell you that one of the things that I think that will solve some of those issues is the building of a new school, and in turn larger, bigger athletic facilities. So and again, I know this is nothing's in stone, nothing's final as far as final designs, but what I've seen in speaking to Dr. Bodie, Dr. Janger, and what our complex is going to look like outside with turf and lights, I think the idea is that increasing our rosters, I don't see as an issue, to be very truthful with you. And when you talk about freshman, JV, and varsity teams and the opportunities to develop our students, I was told when I got here that if a student wants to play a sport at Arlington High School, there's a home for them, or her. And I feel like in the short time I've been here, that's been so true, because I've had so many students who have come to me and said, perfect example, just a couple weeks ago when our spring season started, we had 3 baseball players that were cut, and they were devastated. 24 hours didn't pass. Because that's one of the things that I marvel here at Arlington High School, is our coaches are in constant communication as far as what's going on, who's getting cut, and they confer with each other. Within 24 hours of those 3 young men who got cut from baseball, they were on the lacrosse team. And my thoughts were, that doesn't happen at every high school. In many cases, a lot of coaches are kind of doing their own thing. And the one thing about Arlington that's really been wonderful to watch is the collaboration between all of our coaches and fully understanding the needs of our students. Maybe one student is not necessarily suited to be a baseball player, maybe not this year, and maybe lacrosse is a better option, or maybe swimming is a better option. But I think those conversations need to happen, and that's really important. I don't know if I've answered your question, but I can truly tell you that I feel very confident in that if your son wants to play sports, he's going to have a place here at Arlington High School. And I actually am super excited about the new school and all those opportunities that will help our students get to a different level, not just athletically, but academically.
Dr. Allison-Ampe?
I'm thinking about this because now I'm back in being budget chair, but in past years, discussions were just kind of starting about reviewing athletic fees and how they're distributed across sports. And we've heard many times from parents about how some of our fees are very high, especially compared to other Middlesex leagues. And I feel uncomfortable putting you on the spot because I hadn't even brought it up before, and you're still new, but it is something, I'm wondering if you're going to be thinking about this going forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've actually had conversations with Dr. Bodie about this, and we've talked about, I think one of the things I wanted to really get a better understanding of is what our league is doing. It made sense because our communities are really connected, when you think about the Winchesters, the Lexingtons. So, and there's no one recipe, so to speak. I wouldn't say every school is different, but many of the schools run kind of a different system. Lexington and Winchester, for example, run a universal fee, a flat fee, and they've done a lot of homework, and they went through some trials over the years as far as what made the most sense for them. I can't look you in the eye and tell you I know exactly what that is, but I can tell you that this year we had a lot of interesting feedback from parents about some of our user fees, and it always happened when we were charging gates for certain games. I'll be very honest with you. I got an earful from some parents, and I understand. I totally get it. And the conversation was, geez, I feel like we're getting nickel and dimed for $7 for a game when I'm paying $700 for my hockey, my son who's playing hockey to play hockey. Interesting conversation, and it was nice to kind of go back and forth and hear that. I don't know if a universal fee is the right thing for Arlington High School. I can tell you that the sports that are paying a lot would love it. And I can tell you the sports that are not paying as much would not be very happy. So is there a hybrid? Perhaps. I have to figure that out with the appropriate people, the Dr. Bodie's, Mr. Mason, and kind of figure out what makes the most sense. We've done some homework as far as what other schools are doing, and we've had some conversations, and that'll continue to go on. But I don't know if what we have is the right thing right now. But I have to really see the rest of the year through before I had a concrete decision on what makes the most sense for our school going forward.
Okay. We'd be very interested to hear what you come up with.
Thank you.
Sure.
We have talked about this, and our plan is to, in the fall, engage the budget subcommittee in talking about fees in general. We've been talking about this as well in many areas. We have not touched fees in years. I can't even remember how long it's been. It's a long time. So yes, you will definitely be involved in many of these discussions in the fall. And over the summer, we'll be talking with the proposed draft idea.
Great.
Mr. Thielman?
I'm involved with the high school building project, and so thank you. Thank you for your efforts and for going to the meeting. And we're looking forward to working with you and your staff to design the fields in such a way so we have home field advantage.
That's great.
Yeah. So I'll be holding those meetings with you as soon as we're
I'm
ready.
excited about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, a question has come up from a few parents about participation levels in some of the sports. Do you see some, I mean, there seems to be fewer students participating in football at this point in time, and there seems to be an increase in other sports. And I wonder what is your thinking in terms of balancing that? Where there's an increase in some, there's interest in other, there's an increasing interest in some sports, a declining interest in others. How do you balance that? Football in particular, how do you balance that? And are there any conversations taking place in the Middlesex League about additional sports to add?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can tell you that, let me address football first.
Yeah.
I think that one of the reasons we had some issues with football over the last year or two, particularly last year without having a freshman team, was not necessarily, and I'm fully aware of the fact that Pop Warner isn't what it once was. I understand that. And I also am fully aware of the fact that there is fear regarding concussions and everything else from a health and safety standpoint. But I can truly tell you that I think from doing the homework, with working with our current coach, and working with a lot of the community members externally, specifically, I can tell you that I think football was just a victim of not doing enough work to bring students and to educate parents on what football means and what it takes to play football. I can tell you that we started the end of the football season with 22 coming back the following year, and we were super worried about it. Our current coach, Rob DiLoretto, who I dean of students, informed me just a couple of days ago that we are now at 35. And I feel very confident we'll get even more. He's really hit home going to the middle school and educating not only the students but their parents. He's had multiple parent meetings. I think that'll resolve itself. I really mean that. But it behooves us to make sure our coaches are fully certified, they understand the health and safety measures that go into playing football, and that starts at a very young age. So I think that'll take care of itself. Track has been the sport that has taken on the most students, rightfully so. I think that, again, track is a sport that you can find a place in track because there's so many different options for you, whether you want to be a long distance runner, a short distance, a thrower, an event person. So I think that has been a great thing to watch how much track has grown over the years. Ryan Osting had something to do with that as well. I feel like he attracted a lot of people. But I can tell you that when I look at other sports in the short time I've been here and how they have been influenced by other students, just word of mouth on what it means to be an athlete here and the pride behind that. And when you have people like Coach Bartz, I don't know if everybody knows Robert Bartholomew, who's one of our elder statesmen, you know, and one of our real diplomats for our program, and he's at the middle school still, working those people, working those students. I just feel like when they get here, and we're about to have our annual incoming freshman athlete night on Tuesday, the school does a really good job making sure parents truly understand what it means for their young ones to be in sports. When I think about some of the sports that maybe haven't had the turnout they had in previous years, I look at other factors. How is the youth program? Are our current coaches connecting with those youth coaches? I think there are things that we can fix and make better. Girls basketball is another example. We finished this year with 26 young ladies total in our program. That's an unacceptable number when you think about Arlington and all the young ladies who are playing basketball at the rec level. We're going to make that better. I know we are. So I think some of this has been a victim of just, for whatever reason, not enough hard work. I feel very confident we're going to rectify that.
And are there intramural offerings?
I can't lie to you and tell you we have a lot, only because we are so strapped as far as time.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just us. We're talking about town soccer, town lacrosse, there's rec basketball. There's a lot that goes. We have a lot of stakeholders who use our facilities, and I think it's wonderful. It just limits what we can do. But we do have intramurals in place. Some of the obvious ones, the basketballs, the volleyballs. It's just harder to do.
I have great respect for Bob Bartholomew, but I've never heard diplomatic in Bob Bartholomew.
Let me tell you something about Bob.
Great respect for him.
I do as well, and I marveled at when I went to a wrestling match.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
no matter what event you go to, Coach Bartz is front and center.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I went there, and every person from the middle school student went up and shook his hand and said, "Hi, Coach Bartz. Nice to see you."
Yeah.
It's a real sign of respect. It's
Yeah.
just he's an amazing man. He really is.
I meant that with great affection.
I know you did.
Ms. Morgan?
So can you tell us, so we've heard a lot about football and wrestling and heard a lot about male coaches, and that's great, and I have a daughter, and so I'm really interested in, so I'm hoping that next year when you come back, we can, you can talk to us a little bit about, how many young women are being attracted into the sports programs here, and is that something that you're thinking about and talking about? We haven't heard about it, which is fine, but I've noticed that the conversation we've had has skewed, we've heard about football and wrestling, and that's great, but it makes, I get a little anxious, because I think, oh, yikes, is that what we're, baseball, heard a lot about baseball, girls don't play football, they don't play baseball, they don't wrestle, right? So I'm a little anxious, because that's kind of what we're getting, and so,
I apologize. It wasn't my intention.
No,
Yes.
It just, to me, I was like, oh, wow, okay. So can you tell us a little bit more about, how's that going? Do we have a problem with girls playing sports? I don't think so, but.
Not in the least. No,
Okay.
actually, we have an amazing amount of young females playing our sports. And not just, and again, track is the biggest number, only because of the sheer scope of how many runners they have. But I can tell you that our softball team is probably going to win. I don't want to knock on wood here. I don't want to jinx them, but they're probably going to win their second straight Middlesex League championship. They have an amazing team with amazing young ladies. We have some of our sports teams, our female sports teams, are in rebuilding mode as well. Our field hockey is very young, they just kind of trying to come into their own. Our coach is younger, so she's coming into her own. I can tell you our soccer team had a wonderful season, made the tournament again, did a great job. Our girls basketball team, in light of the fact that we actually had a coach resign mid-year, made the tournament. Super resilience, amazing to watch how hard they worked. We had a couple of amazing senior females who really did a great job at leading that team. Our gymnastics numbers were the most they've been in quite some time. We had 15 gymnastics participants, so I thought, which was fantastic. Our lacrosse is on a 2-game winning streak. And if you know our girls lacrosse team, they've been rebuilding, and trying to make it better. So there's a lot of positive there. And just to speak more to females, and I don't want to be too lengthy, one of the things that I really want to bring here to Arlington, because it's traditional. It's been this way for a long time. Females coach females, males coach males. It's one of the things one of the things that I've seen this real change over the last so many years is the idea of females coaching males. It's one of the things I really want to implement here at Arlington. And it's got to make sense. It's got to be the right female who really understands what they're getting into, and what that means is coaching males is very different. Same thing with our male coaches who are coaching females. You have to fully understand what you're doing. But the idea of females coaching males is such an exciting thing for me, and we've already started that process. So there's a lot of exciting opportunities here, but our female sports are busting at the seams. It's really amazing to watch.
Good.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Just one thing from me. Another thing to put on your plate maybe for a sort of someday sort of thing, and it may have to wait till after the renovation, we have the new facilities, but there is a increasing trend of unified sports with Special Olympics teams, and I'd love to see that looked into, at least see if that's feasible here. Particularly, we do have the lab program here that has student athletes that could possibly participate.
I'll be brief. We've
Sure.
actually had league meetings about this,
Oh, great.
and we've talked about it. Our Lexington athletic director, Naomi Martin, has actually been taking the lead on this. So no question about it. We'll be getting very involved with that in the near future.
Great, thank you.
Great.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming to see us.
Thanks for having me. And by the way,
Thanks
not
for all your hard work.
Was not as intimidating as I thought. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we don't bite.
So good to me. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much.
All right, so now we have the rest of the crowd.
We have, I think everybody's going to come and sit together, right?
Just remember to pass the mic.
But we have to pass the mic, right? All right.
I'm coming here.
What is this?
Okay. Rod, do you need the microphone that's,
I need to take my Grammarly.
all right. Well, let me just, I'm going to basically turn this over to Rod and Dr. McNeil in 1 second, but I just want to sort of frame tonight and also welcome and thank all of our curriculum leaders for coming here tonight to give the school committee and the community who's listening an update on where we are this year with our 18-19 district goals. Many of the goals that relate to the buildings and other infrastructure issues have been front and center at every school committee meeting, but we've only talked probably not as much as we should have about what all has been going on with respect to all our other district goals. This last year, we suggested a new format for how we do the district goals. As everyone knows, there are 4 overarching goals for the district. And in some way, the wording on these overarching goals are really more vision goals in key areas. So what we did this last year was we've had some very specific, more focused objectives, but even those objectives under these larger goals have many action plans. So we actually divided the document, which is on our website and has been on the website all year, into basically the overarching goals and the objectives, and then all of the different actions, which are substantial. And I think this is the first document that's on the district website, which has in black there the overarching goals, which has been pretty much in place. I'm trying to think now, maybe Mr. Schlickman remember, it's been at least 4 or 5 years since we did these in retreat. Mm-hmm. And every year we looked at how can we further the work of that particular goal. And so we have 2 major objectives, but a lot of actions that have gone on. And we have given you, and it's on the website, all of the various things that we were doing cross-curricular in the district to further our vision of where we want to go as a district and as our students as learners, our students as global citizens. So tonight you're going to hear pretty much an update of where we are, and then over the summer we'll sort of put this a little bit more together so you have sort of a complete package of what we accomplished this year. So with that, I'm going to turn that over to Dr. McNeil, and thank you for getting this all organized for tonight.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bodie. So first of all, I would like to thank our dedicated professionals for coming out on a Thursday evening when it's so beautiful outside to participate in this presentation. I'm just going to go through and just introduce everyone, and then we'll get into the presentation. So to my right, we have Dr. David Prudente, who's actually here because Sarah Bird, our Director of Social Emotional Learning and Counseling, is out on maternity leave. So he's going to be here to talk about the work we've done around safe and supportive schools. We have Benny Conklin, our Director of Social Studies. We have Cindy Bouvier, our Director of Health and Wellness. You guys can, you're on TV. We have Larry Weathers, Director of Science, K-12 Science. And all these are directors of K-12, except for our world languages. We have David Ardito, who's Director of Visual Arts. We have Matt Coleman, Director of Math, K-12. We have Bill Papacisis, Director of K-12 Performing Arts. We have Linda Hansen, who is a literacy coach, and she's come to help us with the ELA slide. We have Deb Perry, Director of English, K-12. We have Susan Bisson, Director of Digital Learning. We have Carla Brusacy, our ELL Director. And we have Don Carney, Director of World Languages 6 through 12. So everyone has come. Again, as Dr. Bodie alluded to, we're going to give you an overview of what has been accomplished during this 2018-2019 school year. With that in mind, we are going to speak to our accomplishments, but some of the goals that we have set for ourselves are multi-year goals, and so there's still work to be done on some of those. We're going to share about the process, talk about some of the evidence, and how each goal was assessed in order to give an idea of where we are in the process. And then we're going to respond to your comments and questions. So the way that the slideshow has been set up is we're going to start with goal 1, which and under that is goal objective 1.1. And this goal pretty much refers to the work we've done with Tier 1 instruction, which is instruction for all students. We have some things that have taken place in each content area where we've updated resources, curriculum resources, created curriculum based on new standards. So the curriculum directors will talk about that particular, their work under goal objective 1.1. After we finish this particular section, we'll open up for questions before we go into goal 2. So we're going to start off with Susan Bisson, who's our Director of Digital Literacy.
Good evening. Nice to see everyone tonight. It's been a very productive year for us in digital learning. To give you a little bit of background, I work with Jeff Snyder, who's the digital learning specialist at the high school, Joanna Bradley, who's the schools, we sort of have this core group, and then beyond that, Stacy Kitsis, our librarian at the high school, and Amanda Ludis, who is our assistive technology person. And Allison, I know there's more to Amanda's title than what I just said. What is her whole?
Our alternative augmented communication specialist in assistive technology.
So she has joined our group as well. And one of our big goals this spring and then going forward into next year is our digital citizenship pilot. We are doing this at all levels, and we have based our work on the Massachusetts frameworks, the DLCS, Digital Literacy and Computer Science Standards. We are using BrainPop for our K-8 pilot, and we are using Common Sense Media for our high school pilot. After we collect data from the pilot in the spring, we'll use that information to plan our rollout for the fall. So it's very exciting. It's got a lot of moving parts. I should also say that this work really began last spring with our big team, which includes a digital learning teacher from each building, from elementary on up to high school.
So next up, we have Carla Brusacy, who's going to discuss ELL.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for
inviting me to share a little bit about what we've been doing in English language learner education this past year. I directly work with 11 amazing ELL staff professionals in all the schools, and currently we have about 265 English language learners across the district, with our largest numbers in the elementary schools at Thompson and Hardy School, kind of busting out at the seams at those two schools. But we're really excited because we have about 45 to 50 different linguistic and cultures represented in Arlington. So it's a desirable, community to come in. So I wanted to just share a little bit with what ELL has been doing to connect to the student achievement goal. It is a multi-year goal that we've been working on. It's a major endeavor of working and writing curriculum. Through the summer, some teachers have gotten together to adapt and modify and write ESL curriculum modeled after the DESE ESL MCUs. And I put the big link on there for
MCU?
The model curriculum units. Okay, I put the larger link there so you could see what model curriculum units the state has pushed forward, and we've started to pilot and adapt some of those units here in Arlington. And in our team we've gone on to professional development to get this training. Our team has rolled out this at the state level. So Arlington ELL team is a pushing forward frontier. We've created an ESL curriculum unit sharing site across the state where we're trying to get other districts to upload their units so we're all sharing. And I put that link on there as well. The team of teachers and myself we presented last year at the Matsall ESL conference in May, and we will be presenting again in May of this year. It's a major endeavor. It's one of the requirements that we have when we get evaluated in program evaluation. And a lot of districts still do not have curriculum for ESL, but we're doing really well pushing forward on that. Then Dr. Bodie had asked me to provide a little bit of snippet of the impact of the Look Act and what's going on here in Arlington. So in November of 2017, I know that you're all aware that the governor passed the new law, the Look Act, the Language Opportunity for Our Kids Act. The main areas that are changing in English language learner education are that language acquisition programming is flexible and the oversight is into districts. We have increased input that we need to look at for parents and guardians. We have to really be specific about the educators that are teaching our English language learners. There are major benchmarks, guidance, and templates being put out by the state. There's new data and reporting requirements, and then the state seal of biliteracy is also a factor in that. And then we have to now assess our pre-K learners. One of the things that Dr. Bodie had said to me was, well, how does that impact Arlington? So we're still in the initial stages of that because literally just yesterday I was at a state meeting getting more templates from the state. But the key features of the guidance document that we will be implementing and I'm discussing currently with Dr. McNeil and the team of ELL staff, districts must adopt procedures to identify ELs who do not meet English proficiency benchmarks. The Look Act requires districts to provide parents of ELs with the benchmark guidelines, materials describing those benchmarks, and we have to come up with a student success plan, and they provided templates for us. So that means we don't have a parent community currently in Arlington for ELL learners. We have to, we're starting to invite parents to join an LPAC. We will be creating an LPAC, similar to what districts have for CPAC. That's going forward. We have Heather Smith, who's our ELL family liaison, has done a lot of in other districts to see what they're doing with a similar profile as ourselves, like, the Belmonts, Winchester, Lexington, what are they all doing? Because the larger urban districts already have these LPAC communities in place. And then we have to establish a process for the district where we're going to be identifying those learners that are struggling and what are we doing to help those learners. So it's become more structured. We've always done that, but the state is now making it more structured where we have to produce data, student success plans, and so it's more, I would say, more structured. And that's going forward in planning process for the school year of 2019, 2020. I've currently come up with like a little draft calendar that I will be sharing with Dr. McNeil of what needs to be done for the next school year. The biggest thing is in September, we need to send out parent notification letters about these changes, and they have to be translated into the native languages of the students that need it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say we have a number of slides that we have to get through, so we're trying to be as, like, look at the highlights of the accomplishments, and then maybe we can get at some of the, and that's why we've also included links, so that we're going to send you the PowerPoint, because when we download it into Novus, it's downloaded as a PDF, so you can't access the links. So if you're trying to access them right now, you won't be able to, but we're going to email you. You can?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So I was going to say Karen's going to send it to you as an attachment, but I see she's already done that. So thank you, Karen.
Nervous. Yeah.
Okay. So next up, we have health and wellness. We pass the mic down.
Pass it down.
Thank you. Good evening. I will try to be as brief as possible. At the elementary level, we have our physical educators under the guise of Guy Chavone. He is our lead teacher down there, and they have been working specifically on the Sparks curriculum and enhancing that curriculum to include backyard games and also to enhance some of the lessons that are already in there. And the action is the development of these lessons, and the timeline is throughout this year. At the middle school, the PE department is focused on improvement of the fitnessgram and making sure that 10% of our students are reaching the healthy fitness zone, are increasing that total to 10% that are reaching the fitness zone. And we're doing that through the 6th grade is really focusing on sit-ups, the 7th grade on push-ups, and the 8th grade on the pacer. And it's great to say that we can do these in class, but in reality, students have physical education twice a week, and so they need to do it at home as well. So that's the push. The push is to get them to be working on these skills at home and in school. And they also have a pre-test and a post-test to gather data, and this is happening in February through May. At the high school level, we have heart rate monitors where we're gathering data. So they're working on cardiovascular fitness at the high school level in the fitness unit, and it's specific to the heart rate monitors where the students are actually working out, and on an LCD screen that's visible to them all, they can see actually where they're at, if they're in the green zone, the red zone, or so on and so forth. And then they can actually go in and input their scores later on into the software in the program. So this is specific to cardiovascular fitness. We're gathering data, and it happens during the fitness unit, which is depending on when the class has the fitness unit. We have to vary that. And that's it.
Thank you. Next up, we have Denny Conklin, Director of Social Studies.
Hi, everyone. I always like to use these opportunities to thank all of the wonderful teachers we have in this district. I kind of just organize things and facilitate things, but they're doing such a good job at the elementary level, middle school, and high school level, really putting in the time and effort on the curriculum planning and the really fantastic delivery of instruction. I was in a 7th grade class the other day. They were doing a lesson on human rights, and I just wanted to jump out of my seat and participate because it was so interesting, the conversations students were having about human rights. This is an overview of some of the work that we've done so far this year in social studies. It's an exciting time to be talking about history and social studies because of the new frameworks that were approved this past June by DESE. I'm going to be back here in a month to talk a little bit more about the changes to the frameworks. Specifically, the 8th grade is the biggest thing that we're going to be pushing forward next year with a new course on civics. So when I'm back at the end of May, I'll talk more specifically. I'll have some of the 8th grade teachers with me to talk about what that course is looking like, what the goals are, and how we're structuring the curriculum so far. A number of developments across the grades that touch upon multiple parts of the district goals. In the 1st grade, we've been working on revising the social studies curriculum. specifically the unit that first grade teachers teach on Africa. We were wanting to move away, this goes along with our goal of becoming more culturally proficient, but moving away from our teaching of Africa beyond some of the stereotypes of Africa, of the animals and some of the exotic mystification that sometimes happen when we talk about Africa. So we've been working on making that Africa unit more culturally competent, talking about specific countries rather than Africa as one whole continent. Also looking at modern Africa, the rise of cities, and the technology centers that we're seeing in parts of Africa. Third grade, with the leadership of Dr. McNeil, we've been doing a wonderful job in revising Monogamy Day, formerly known as Colonial Day, my favorite day in the whole world. But specifically, the team at Stratton has done a fantastic job of taking this beyond a one-day experience and spreading it out across an entire unit with guest speakers, activities throughout an entire unit. So we're very excited about that. Again, the links will all push you through to some more details about these. Fifth grade, one of the big things that we've been pushing this year is we're going to have a new common assessment. Coming into the district, it's really hard beyond the examples of student work to gauge what students are necessarily retaining in terms of their knowledge in social studies. So this is going to be the first real piece of data that we're going to get from the elementary level in terms of how our students are achieving in social studies. So at the end of this year, fifth grade teachers will be administering a common assessment on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and we will be breaking down those questions into different subcategories so we have an idea on the historical thinking skills and historical practices that the students are doing very well on and that we still need to improve our instruction upon. And then finally, 6 through 12, we've been looking at the skills of research and writing the research paper, and that has been the first year of a 2-year goal that we're doing in reconceptualizing how we want that research process to look. We've been dividing up the skills. We've been reading up on the literature, on what it means to do historical research. We gave a survey to every student in grades 6 through 11. So we have this huge pool of data on their attitudes about historical research. So we're using that to inform the way that we restructure our curriculum in terms of historical research. 8th grade civics I mentioned, and then modern world. We've been working as a team to make it more modern and more representative of the world. So we have some brand new case study units coming in at the end of the year on modern Brazil, on Israel-Palestine, on modern Iran. So we're really excited that the course is going to truly live up to its name with this revision.
Next up, we have Deb Perry, Director of Literacy, and Linda Hansen, Elementary Literacy Coach.
Thank you for having us. The area of literacy and English, they're both vast in a way, a different way from the way that history is vast. It seems as if we're always doing kind of the same thing. But one of the ways we're trying to focus the work that we do, both at the elementary level and at the secondary level, is through helping kids to have ownership of the reading and the writing that they do. And that shows up very differently at the elementary than it does at the secondary. So Linda's going to talk for a second about what's going on in the elementary, and then I'll talk about the middle and high school.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So in K through 5, we've been working especially hard this year on rolling out some new reading workshop units of study in 3rd and 5th grade. We'd been focusing on grades 1, 2, and 4, so now the focus has shifted to grades 3 and 5. We've been tag teaming with math, science, and social studies, so we don't overwhelm elementary teachers with a new curricula in every content area every year. So in 3rd grade this year, we're very excited to push out 2 new reading workshop units of study. The first one is called Building a Reading Life. It's kind of launches the reading workshop at the intermediate level. The second one is called Character Studies. I'll let you guess what the focus of that theme is. So both units really develop the important components of the reading workshop experience for students. One, as Deb said, is around student choice around text, fostering kind of agency and engagement. Another is around really making sure that there's time to read within the school day, working on stamina, reading rate, and volume of reading. And then finally, at every grade level, we want to make sure that there's a book club unit where there's collaboration and discussion that we're working on as well. So that's 3rd grade, so these 2 new units across the grade level. In 5th grade, we've worked on, with teachers in 3 different schools, to pilot 2 reading workshop units of study. One is a fiction unit called interpretation book clubs analyzing themes. It's a sophisticated look at reading through an interpretive lens. And then there's a nonfiction unit called Tackling Text Complexity, moving up levels of nonfiction. So in that unit, students learn to shift their reading to address text complexity. They get to research a topic of their choice and synthesize information across different texts. So again, I just want to come back to touching on the themes of the reading workshop, which are choice, agency, and engagement, stamina, building stamina, working on collaboration and discussion, and then also evidence-based writing.
Thanks. And those same elements are ones that we see in the middle school. In the middle school, both at Gibbs and then mostly in the 8th grade, we're looking at book choice and the books that we're giving students to read with an effort towards finding books in the 6th grade where students have a lot of choice, and we have book clubs which we're instituting through a grant that we got from AEF. So that's happening. It happened in a pilot sort of form last year, and we're doing it sort of in its full-fledged form this spring. And then the 8th grade teachers have been working on finding some new titles. We've purchased a number of books for them to read and to them to sort of think about and see how they're going to work, if they will work with 8th grade students. So we're investigating jettisoning a couple of titles that we have and instituting a couple of new ones with the idea of trying to engage kids in a different way in the reading that they're doing. So in the middle school, the focus has been more on reading. In the high school, we've been thinking about reading for a long time. We've made a number of shifts over the last couple of years. So this year, our shift has been in the area of writing, and we've moved towards investigating narrative writing, which is a way of bringing kids into books and also into writing through issues of perspective. So looking at voice, perspective, and narration. So those things are a kind of writing that we haven't spent as much time on. And we're also concomitantly looking in the things that we are reading at the voices in particular books that we haven't noticed before. So again, this all comes together around where does a reader sit in reference to what's going on in a book? How does a writer, if a writer wants to write about a book, how do you come in, how do you come out? So it goes back to what I said at the beginning, that we're trying to show something about ownership as a reader and as a writer to students. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you. Next up, we have Matt Coleman, Director of K-12 Math.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So just quick little summaries. Similar to what Denny had said, Mr. Conklin, I'll be back in June to give a more broad review of some of the content, but these are just some of the highlights. At the elementary level, we're in the final year. This is our 3rd year of implementation of Investigations 3.0. Our rollout essentially was K1 one year, 2-3 the following year. This year it's 4-5. The primary goal, just to tie back to the 1.1, really is about aligning to the state standards, not just the content standards, but also the practice standards, ensuring that the mathematics we're delivering is valuing the process just as much as it is the product and the answer. The other reason why the implementation made sense for us is the coherence across all the grades. We want to ensure that the story that's being told from K through 5 actually makes sense, and there's actually recurring themes, recurring games. So that whole process of really revising that curriculum and focusing on the instruction is culminating this year. Our goals next year is really going to center around assessment. At grades 6 through 8, a bunch of years ago, we had someone back there.
It's nice background. Keep it
I know it's making me sleepy though.
Train arriving in Japan.
Nice little lullaby. So for the middle school, a bunch of years ago, within the first 2 years while I was here, we essentially had readopted a new curriculum. And what we found is we are in that kind of refreshment cycle right now. So illustrative mathematics, it's a resource hub that was actually initially generated by Bill McCollum, one of the authors of the Common Core. He and a team of writers actually created free resources that are phenomenal. So we've been dabbling at the middle school level in some of the units, primarily because we want to actually look at some content that actually embraces some more visual representations, other ways in which we can access the content. So that's been a nice little revision. I should note that the utilization of that open up resources in 6 through 8 wasn't a goal that we had going in, but it was one of those things where a lot of the teachers really expressed interest, so we started really taking that on. At the high school, one of the big initiatives there, we're really in the process, and this is a recurring theme throughout, in considering our place in equitable instruction. So what we really were looking to do at the high school level is to consider our Curriculum B courses and why we offer them. So what we've done over the past going into this year and then also next year, can we close our Curriculum B courses, create standard courses that are much more supported for as many different learners as we can. So right now we do not have an Algebra 1 Curriculum B class anymore. We've actually absorbed them all inside of Algebra 1 Curriculum A, and things are going well. With that is we readopted a curriculum that was used in the past. It's a curriculum that actually aligns to what we've historically used for geometry. This kind of goes back to that coherence statement I had made before about elementary. We wanted that message, the themes, to be consistent with our Algebra 1 and geometry classes. So currently in that Algebra 1 class, we have co-teachers within this, together with the special ed department, but then we also have a co-teaching pair of 2 general ed math teachers. And in both instances, the pairings and the work is going well. We've found some good success in meeting the needs of more of our students. That's going to tie to a similar goal for next year, which is the closure of our geometry Curriculum B class and a similar type of structure. So that's been going well. And then our revision of a CS, that is a year-to-year pretty much task for us. For us going into this year, it really centered around our offering of an elective for 7th and 8th. This year it was offered as a joint 7th and 8th grade class. It went well. This also gave us an opportunity to align to the new digital literacy and computer science standards, which has been kind of nice. Next year, our process will move along. We're right now in the process of already revising our curriculum for next year, because we will then offer a distinct 6th grade class, a distinct 7th grade class, and a distinct 8th grade class. So as we're moving year to year, the goal is to have a fully fleshed out year in, year out program where anybody from 6 through 12 can take it, where right now grade 6 is mandatory for all. Next year it'll be elective still. Following year, we'll see if we can get that to be set for all. And then our high school program is always in flux. Just to add one little thing on there, inside of all this has been, I guess, consistent professional development for our staff. Our middle school staff, they are only CS teachers, so our PD can be much more on the fly. But for the high school, we're trying to spread the love. We are training some of our math teachers to be CS teachers. So every year, one of our other goals is to involve a different math teacher in our CS program so we can broaden the types of classes that we can offer and offer more in the future as we're moving along. And all that's been going well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Bill Papacisis. He's going to talk about the music program.
Thank you. Before I highlight for you what we've been doing this year, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of the themes of the Massachusetts Arts Curriculum Framework. When we engage in the arts as either consumers of the arts or as makers of the arts, we exhibit 4 behaviors. We either perform or we create. We perceive and respond to what we're looking at or what we're seeing or what we're making, and we make connections between our personal lives and the world around us. And the way that translates into music in terms of curriculum development and the state standards is for students to exhibit those 4 behaviors. We have content standards in music around singing and playing instruments, reading and notating music, improvising and composing original musical ideas, using critical thinking skills to make informed judgments about what students are hearing and listening to, and making judgments about their own work and the work of others. And finally, they're making connections between the arts and other disciplines and their community and the world in which they live. And this year, we focused on 3 priority areas: our primary grades K to 2, grade 6, and some curriculum development at the high school level. Grade 2, at primary grades, I think, has been where we've made the most major impact on students. We've adopted a new curriculum. It's called the First Steps in Music, and it's an approach in which students are totally immersed in music making and listening, and developing pre-literacy musical skills. And if you take a look at the lesson components, in each lesson, if you were to observe a music lesson in kindergarten through 2, you would see 8 components, or 8 musical activities in the lesson, and they're all focused on immersion, music immersion. So students are learning songs, they're learning songs by rote, they're learning fragments of songs, they're having musical conversations in class with each other and with their teacher. So they're creating and improvising, and they're having, and they're also using a great deal of movement to develop to develop a sense of musical expression and body coordination, and through the movement they also learn about musical form and musical textures, and it's not unlike the way we develop our linguistic skills when we're pre-toddlers. Our parents read to us. We hear language all around us. We learn vocabulary. We learn little snippets of phrases. More Cheerios, please. And then all those kinds of things that our kids say when they're 2 and 3 years old. And then they start to speak in sentences, and they start to have conversations with people in the family, and so we learn musical skills much in the same way. You'll also see it's kind of really unique. Our teachers, we have sets of musical songtale books. They're large picture books, and you may find at the end of a lesson where a teacher is singing a songtale to the child while they're reading the book, and it's a great way for students to develop listening skills and to hear music sung really expressively. In grade 6, we thought that we were going to develop some new curriculum units for grade 6, and then we decided, with all the changes that were going on with our 6th graders, and with the opening of the Gibbs, we took a step back and we just did some exploration. So we decided to focus on music that we decided to focus on relevancy, and so we developed we explored a unit on what's rock, and students were studying music that they listen to every day, and analyzing for its content and describing its content in really concrete terms, what they were hearing, the instruments that they were using, lyrics, and shapes of melodies, and just the sort of creative types of things that current day composers are using. And that led right into a jazz jam where students learn the 12-bar blues on the guitar. We have a guitar unit for 6th graders, and they learned 12-bar blues, and then that led into a composer and the Composer and Me unit, where they wrote their own lyrics and their own melodies, and played them on and learned to play them on keyboard. And in Project Block, the school's theme was overcoming adversity, and in this the project for 6th graders in music was that they compiled a CD of music in which songwriters expressed how they overcame adversity, or how they songs that expressed how society overcomes adversity. And it was really a very interesting project. So we're going to spend some time this summer to really cull out this curriculum and bring it together. And in grades 9 through 12, we really didn't have any curriculum guides. And so we began the process, and we're still working on it, of developing standards-based course outlines. And this is a little difficult to see, but the first section are the power standards, the grades 9 through 12 power standards in music that teachers are teaching to. And in the second section, if we scroll down, are the essential questions and enduring understandings that are addressed in the class, and an outline of the course content, knowledge, and skills, and then finally the methods of assessment that teachers are using in the classroom. This particular one is for freshman course, and we've completed five curriculum outlines, 5 courses, and we'll be hopefully finishing the rest of this work next year.
Okay. I also would like to thank Susan for coming out. She does have to leave. She has another commitment that she has to get to. So thank you very much for coming out and sharing. And yes, I'll yeah. So next up, so we're not going to present on the school counseling, but the information is there with the links for you to read through. As I mentioned before, Sarah Bird is on maternity leave, so but she was still able to provide us with the information of things that were accomplished for school counseling, grades 6 through 8 and through 9 through 12. Next up, we have science. Larry Weathers. Can you pass the mic down to Larry?
Thanks for letting us share some of our accomplishments for the year. As Dr. O'Neill said, there's not time to share all of them, so these are some snippets. So our general goal in science, this is there every year, is just to make scientifically literate citizens, let them know what climate change is about and how to be good voters about technical issues. Then, moving on from there, we are starting at the elementary school. I'll just deal with the elementary school in Goal 1.1. So we have started a project to create some common assessments. We wanted to do this because we wanted to see for ourselves how the alignment of the curriculum was with the standards. And so as we started to develop these, we have several drafts right now, and we're developing more. We wanted to make sure that as we created these questions, and we have a team of science teacher leaders from the elementary schools doing this, but we've had FOSS consultants come in, because being psychometricians is not an easy task. And we wanted to do it well. So, and one of the difficult parts was not assessing the content standards, but assessing the practices. Those are much more difficult to assess. The scientific practices are things like asking better questions, or how do you use models to represent a scientific principle, things like that. And they're more difficult to assess. So that put us back a little bit, but we brought those FOSS consultants out, and we're meeting again with them, and we're continuing to refine the assessments. We want 3 assessments during the year to parallel the 3 kits that the kids are exposed to, and to parallel the 3 trimesters that the kids are involved in at each elementary school. Because what we hope these common assessments will do is to give a ready correlation between a student's progress and the teacher's progress report. So when they look at that common assessment, they'll already have the information to put on the progress report. And so we're in that process. We had hoped to have some of them out by this year. We may still in June, but if not, it'll be an ongoing process. Oh, and that's just, FOSS has a wonderful assessment program, but they're much more involved than we wanted to do for each trimester. So we're just using their questions as models, and we're creating our own. Okay.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. David Ardito.
Thanks, everybody, for giving us this time. So our main goal, our primary goal for this year across all grade levels has been to increase the personalization of learning for all students. By that we mean putting each student at the very center of their own learning and their own art making. One way we've been doing this is to emphasize, and this has been true for a number of years, the 8 studio habits of mind. Rod, if you can open that link. So this is a typical curriculum document that lists all 8 habits, and it shows how for each grade level those studio habits play out in a lot of projects that kids are doing. My 2 favorite, and the 2 that connect most to social and emotional learning, and I think goal 1.1 and 1.2 are engage and persist. And the studio habits are in the gray box, by the way. And I want to read that studio habit because it's so important. Learning to embrace problems of relevance within the art world and or of personal importance. To develop focus and other mental states and conducive to working and persevering at art tasks. And then express, I think you scroll down and you'll find, express sounds pretty obvious for creative work, but there's a certain way you can approach teaching how to express yourself on a personal level and not through the eyes of the art teacher, but through the eyes of the student. The definition there is learning to create works that convey an idea, a feeling, or personal meaning. So these 8 studio habits have come out of research at Mass College of Art and Design, where most of our faculty is actually from. And so they have a tremendous amount of experience in their own art education with those habits, and they really give meaning to what we're doing in the art studios. The other way we personalize student learning is through TAB. That's the next, there it is. And that stands for Teaching for Artistic Behavior. I think the last time I saw you folks, I gave you a sense of what TAB is. And we're continuing to build that teaching strategy across the system. I firmly believe that it's the way to go. And so we're working hard to get teachers on board with it. And some teachers are over the moon about teaching in this way. If you click on that link, you'll see 2 TAB stations. So typically in a TAB art room, you have multiple stations that students can choose from on any given day to create art. And these are 2 separate stations. One happens to be in collage, the other happens to be in fibers. This is also animation, I guess. But
coming at you.
It's going
I'm trying to get it to scroll down.
Thank
but
you.
I guess,
That's okay.
I'll try to make it bigger.
But if you can imagine being an art student and coming into an art room that has these stations set up and you get to sign up for a station and just work independently with teacher guidance, it's a pretty exciting place to be each time you go. And there's a lot of monitoring and organizing for the art teacher to do to make sure that students are moving through the stations week to week and making good choices about what they're going to do on that day. The other beautiful part about TAB is that not only do students choose their media, but they choose their theme as well. And often those themes can be extremely personal. Next slide, Rod. Thank you. So I think the other thing we do exceedingly well and have been working on for the last couple of years is getting students to use art for socializing, for addressing social issues, and for dealing with emotional, personal issues. This piece I chose because of the written statement by the student at the bottom, which I'll read. This piece is really important to me because in society, people judge each other just because of how they look. And this piece shows how people see each other differently. So our teachers are out there really encouraging kids to think about the world that they live in and to not be shy about communicating that through their art. I think the next slide. This continues on that theme. So students, to reinforce this, students are encouraged to write about their artwork, and that written statement is often posted with the art in the exhibits around the schools. This particular piece by an Ottoson student is a typical project at Ottoson called a remix project, where a student chooses a piece from the past. In this case, it's a Renaissance work, and they reinterpret it in modern day, with modern day concerns, with their own personal concerns. So this student chose a work by Holbein from the late 16th century, and it's if you go back to the piece of art, that's her interpretation of that painting, and her written statement, which is very difficult to read up there, has to do with pollution, air pollution in Boston and elsewhere. So we're thrilled about having written work as an adjunct to the creative visual work. I think that's it.
Thank you. And next up, we have Dawn Carney from World Language, 6-12. You can pass the mic down to her.
Good evening, thank you. I actually love being last because I love hearing everything that my colleagues are doing, but it points out where World Languages has really changed since at least the time that I was learning languages, probably for most of you around the table, that it's no more like math used to be, where it was, you have to know this in order to do this, in order to do this, in order to do this. Mm-hmm. We built everything up very grammatically and through vocabulary with a focus on accuracy. And we do not have updated curriculum frameworks in Massachusetts for world languages because we are literally at the bottom of the list alphabetically, but in terms of requirements and building understanding about the importance of language. So we understand that here in Arlington, which is wonderful, and we work off of the national, there's a national standards. Our work this year really has been continuing the work that was started by my predecessor. This is my second year here in Arlington. And thematic units are are a far more effective way of teaching students to be able to communicate, which means to understand by listening or reading or watching, and to be able to express themselves orally and in writing. And in very different ways than we thought in the past. So as Bill talked about immersion, that's the most important thing that we need in world languages, is for students to be immersed by the language every day. And as soon as possible, start producing really predictable chunks, just like the more Cheerios, please. The exact same thing in language. Language acquisition is language acquisition regardless whether it's first, second, or third language. It just plays out differently based on which language it is and what your age is. So shifting to thematic units is an entire flip-flop of how we used to do things and how none of us have been trained in this. Again, the work started with my predecessor, and what folks learned by trying to roll out some of the units is what wasn't, where they weren't really thematic units, but rather reflected typical textbook units that weren't based on a theme, but rather a topic built around grammar and vocabulary instead of the exact opposite. So we're learning about that. This learning is, somebody else used the word, I think, profound or significant. I mean, it takes forever to wrap your brain around this in a really deep way, and that happens only through doing the units and having lots and lots and lots of trial and error. And that's hard for us as teachers because we want to do our best every day and give the kids like this finished product that we know is going to work for them. And it's hard for us. So we're doing a lot of learning, which is our own adult learning and social emotional learning and having our own growth mindset. But it's a real time commitment. And as everybody here has talked about, the teachers are committed to this work and their own professional learning. We do not have units rolled out. We have some previous units that we are working to adjust to be able to actually have a pace that we can sustain. I've learned through some of my previous work and even just the work that happened previously in Arlington that too much too soon just overwhelms everybody and the system breaks down. So a lot of our focus is on instruction that can help us shift along the way until we get the final curriculum product in there. But the learning, we had 2 days this year. We'll have 2 days again next year. And that's the whole department with a consultant. And that's supplemented by lots of other learning, both in-house and outside professional development that folks were engaging in small teams and individually. That's it.
Okay, we're going to take a break right now and ask if you have any comments or questions after 1.1. And then I'm going to go into 2.1. I'm just going to pick out a couple of slides. I know we're going to talk about safe and supportive schools and then the work we've done around student trauma and educating our staff about trauma. And then, because if we were to go through every slide, this would take another hour or so. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask questions about Goal 1.1, the information that's been presented, and then we'll go to 2.1 and just highlight those couple of slides, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right. Ms. Morgan, you want to start?
Sure. I heard from a couple of people, we're talking about the idea of common assessments, which is something I'm not super familiar with, even though I suspect that my kids have taken lots of them in elementary school. So I guess, first of all, I'll get to my question. So my feedback is, I think it's tricky as a parent to feel as though your kids are being assessed and evaluated in school and you never get any feedback about that. I never see it. I understand that we're trying to, to use them to, provide with their evaluations on their progress reports. But I would be much more interested in understanding if my fifth grader knew the difference between the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. I understand that assessment hasn't rolled out yet, but I would be much more interested in knowing if my kid knew that as opposed to whether she's, progressing or meeting plus in, some of the social studies things. So, it would be interesting. I imagine that part of the reason that you don't share that out is that you want to use some of the same assessments year over year. I don't know what it is, but it would be helpful if somehow we could share that because I would be interested. And I was also wondering if we ever, as a committee or does the administration ever see that? I mean, I assume you look at the data about how students do, right? But how far up does that go? Who sees that?
Well,
I mean, I can ask Rod because I presume it's similar across disciplines.
We use the common assessments in order to get a full picture. There's just one piece of data that we use in order to evaluate a student's progress. And that could come out also through your conversations during parent-teacher conferences. So you could, talk to the teacher. The teachers utilizes those assessments in order to give you a overall picture of how your student is progressing. It's not like we're, and I don't know, and I haven't sat in on all the, obviously I haven't sat in on all the parent-teacher conferences, but I would imagine that the teachers can reference those during the parent-teacher conference. Well,
I have 4 kids, so I have a cumulative 20 years of conferences. So I've never seen one referenced. So I don't know. I mean, I've probably been to 20 plus, almost 20 conferences, and I've never seen it. I know that they're given, so I will, and my kids will sometimes report it. So I will go to the teacher and say, please make a photocopy of, Susie's assessment and send that home to me because I want to see it. But it's quite a lot of work to get that,
Well,
so.
I don't know if we would ever share the actual, working document, but definitely utilize the results to give you that picture of how your child is progressing. Like I said before, it's one piece of evidence, and one reason that not sharing the common assessment is we don't want parents to become hyper-focused on how their kid is doing on that particular common assessment. We want to say this is really giving information back to the teachers on how they're meeting the various benchmarks and the standards, and so that they can adjust their instruction. But it does help give an overview of how that child is progressing. So there might be a specific skill that child needs to work on, and that's something that the teacher can communicate through the parent-teacher conferences or in a phone call or something of that nature.
Okay, understood. My feedback, though, to all of you is that as a parent, my experience has been that we're not, maybe it's being infused in the report cards that we're reading, but we haven't been historically privy, at least I haven't been at my kids' school, to how.
But you've gotten back the formative assessments, which are the test in the unit, quizzes or the unit test or things of that nature. You've seen that come home you haven't seen any assessments come home?
Very, very infrequently. Yeah, very few of them come home.
Okay.
So that is just my experience. We, obviously we're one family. We go to one school. Just, it's interesting and helpful to hear about how you're assessing because I will say I'm not super hyper test focused, but I've always wondered, gosh, I wonder how they think these kids are I wonder how they know what they're learning. And I do think that kids are assessed more than I'm aware of. And that's because they don't come home. Which, I think it's one way. It means I don't feel like as a parent, I have a lot of insight into necessarily into what they're doing.
Work products, student work products. So we can definitely look into that.
Mr. Thielman?
You might have covered this, Linda, in the literacy program, but there have been a few parents that have raised concerns about the DRA and the difference between the DRA scores and the MCAS scores. And I'm wondering if there's some conversations going on to change that assessment and how you would respond when the parent says, my child got scored wherever in reading on the DRA, and then the MCAS is a different score. This came up in a forum we were at the other night.
So yes,
Okay.
there's been a lot of conversation on our end as well, and I'll let Deb, jump in if you want to as well. So the DRA is a fairly outdated, it's a pre-Common Core assessment. But there's two parts of it, really. There's the oral reading fluency part, and then there's the comprehension part. The oral reading fluency part really hasn't changed too much, and that's looking at rate and accuracy of reading. So that we still feel really quite comfortable with. We know it really well. We think it really gives teachers a good sense of how kids are progressing through the reading levels. The comprehension part is, again, pre-Common Core, kind of outdated at this point in time. This year it was only used in first and second grade for the comprehension part. In third grade, we looked at using the pre and post assessments that come with the reading workshop. And what we like about that is they're all very robust Common Core questions, and that they're directly connected to the units of study. So you can see where where kids are weak, and then you can address it during the unit, and then you can see at the end how they've improved. At fourth and fifth grade, we have, for the last 2 years, we've been using the iReady assessment to look at comprehension in a more kind of comprehensive Common Core way. So when you say DRA right now, it's really just in grades 3 through 5, it's really just looking at that oral reading fluency score. So I think we agree that it's, there's a disconnect right now. And so we've been looking at other things and also trying to find things that really connect to the curriculum and really give teachers actionable information that they can use for small group targeted instruction. So that's really our focus right now.
We have new assessments next school year?
So we tried, again, this year we piloted in third grade these pre and post assessments with the reading workshop unit. We'd like to expand that because we think it was pretty successful, but there's a whole process involved, and Dr. McNeil and Perry and the literacy coaches are looking at, kind of, and Dr. Bodie, iReady, what information are we getting there? How well correlated with MCAS is that? Is it redundant? Do we already, MCAS is a pretty good assessment in and of itself, and it's something we have to do anyway. So we're really kind of looking at what other kinds of information do classroom teachers need to better inform their instructions throughout the units of study, given that we have this robust, rigorous information through the MCAS.
I think what the parents who raised this issue were concerned about was that they to get the test, the DRA is done, it gives them reassurance their child is doing well, then they get the third grade MCAS scores back, and they're not consistent. And so they're like, well, she's in fourth grade now, why wasn't this addressed last year? And so that was sort of a complaint that we heard recently, and so, I don't know, I just wanted you to be aware, that's what is on the ground right now.
Yeah. And another thing that we've talked a lot about is third grade MCAS is the gateway MCAS test, so it's a pretty big shock for a lot of third graders taking that kind of standardized test for the first time. So what I'm hearing too is communication around the purpose of the DRA and what it does and what information it does and doesn't give us, and then kind of more along with what Jane was saying, kind of more information about how the child is doing within the curriculum and within the program that gives other indicators about really how they're progressing through those Common Core skills might be warranted as well.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Oh, yes, Mr. Shippen.
Yeah. Let me go through a couple things that I'd like to know. One is, what percentage of our teachers are SCI endorsed?
All
Do
of
you
them.
ever count on that?
I would, well, that is a requirement, so, I mean, I don't know how many teachers in the district, I guess we could look that up. Rob would have that information.
Would you say we're adequately covered, that every grade has more than enough SEI teachers?
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
that any non-endorsed teachers would be an exception rather than the rule?
I would make that, yes.
Okay, that's
Yes.
fine, that's all I needed to know. I'm really fascinated by the elimination of the level B in Algebra 1, because whenever you tell kids they can't do something, they'll meet that expectation. So can you just give me a little more of a sense of how kids that we now have moving up into A-level courses are faring, what you're seeing and why they're successful?
So for us, it was a big equity issue. It breaks my heart sometimes when you would walk into some of the curriculum B classes and they could be a visual representation of have and have-nots. And one of my worries is our role in kind of the systematic production of that. So it's really been a goal to and this kind of ties to the elementary work as well, create environments where you could meet the needs of more learners. You're broadening the scope of what the content you're delivering. So for us over the past couple of years, we've really been working to, in those B-level classes, increase the rigor, shifts the framings so it much more closely aligned to the curriculum A class. So just to kind of add some more transparency and detail, this wasn't just a one-year, like, rip off the Band-Aid. Like, we've been working over the past couple of years, and it got to the point where we were starting to see that we can actually pull off similar lessons in both of those levels.
I can imagine you were doing a lot of work in the middle school to
That's exactly right, with the math sport program. So for us, the beginning, the first term, it was a shock for some of the students who were in that class because it feels culturally different, like it's just a little different. But the one thing I can confidently say is the overwhelming majority of those students, as the year has progressed, they're showing improvement in their overall grade. Some of that also comes with our ability to then figure out not to shift it, but some of the issues with assessment is you have to make sure that your assessments are assessing what you want it to assess. That sounds so simple, but you've got to make sure your grade production is a representation of what you value. So for us, another part of it this year was to figure out in that Algebra 1 class, how do we actually generate grades that are representative of what we want? So as the year's gone on, it's been kind of a reconciliation in two fronts, which is the students becoming much more comfortable in that A-level class and not being in a somewhat of a separate environment. And the second part is also the teachers' understanding of how we can broaden and shift our ability to assess. And with those, we're seeing better achievement and students feeling much more confident. It also comes with our ability to work with those teachers in co-teaching pairs. Because some of those students who had historically struggled are going to end up in a co-taught environment, in one sense with two math teachers, two gen ed math teachers, and in one sense with special educators. So that development of their co-teaching skills has improved over the year as well. So with all that, we're pretty excited for what that holds. We're pretty happy. This is the other thing to kind of think about the pathway. The other shift we did this year was in setting the tone for next year with closing the Curriculum B for geometry. We've already started to use the overwhelming majority of the same curriculum resources, somewhat at a modified level for the B level, for the geometry and geometry B. So it's, again, seamless. It's not like it's going to be ripping off the Band-Aid. These students have been converging to that pathway for the past couple of years.
This is extraordinary, and I don't think we've told this story loudly enough. I'm very, very impressed with what you're doing. The other question I have is that we've added another transition, K-5 to Gibbs, to Addison to AHS, and I know that could be a challenge. What are you finding out there in terms of that new connection, and how are we transitioning between levels?
For math?
For anything. Is there something we need to be paying attention to as a committee that would assist in that kind of thing?
Well, it's funny as you say that. We just had a transition meeting today with Kristen DeFrancisco, the principal of Gibbs, with curriculum leaders, or some of them were able to make it and meet with her. And we talked about what the transition would look like from 5th to 6th and then 6th to 7th, which would be new because we have this new building structure. So in order for us to collect data to see how it's actually working that would be years out since this is the first year. But what hasn't changed is what is going on with from 5th to 6th grade. I think the new element to this is going from 6th to 7th grade. So, she's pretty much looking at how that transition took place from 5th to 6th grade and then kind of replicating that from 6th to 7th grade and working with Brian Maringer, the principal of Addison. So things like sending out surveys to parents, surveys to students to see what kind of things that we need to cover during the tours, and then setting up tours for students to come visit the Addison from Gibbs, to go to Addison and visit, from Gibbs to Addison, and also setting up where an element of a visit where teachers from 7th grade at Addison can come and visit Gibbs. So making sure that there's that two-way communication between teachers, and also giving students an opportunity to visit Addison and ask questions, and utilizing the data that she gets back from the surveys in order to construct and plan the parent forums.
So that vertical alignment between the teachers that usually is the first thing to fray when you're inserting an additional transition.
Right.
And I'm wondering, this seems to be something that we as a committee can think about and collaborate for funding or whatever else we can do as a committee to ease that burden. So that's why my ear's on that.
Well, like I said, that new transition, we'll see how it pans out next year as the students go from Gibbs to Addison. But a lot of work and a lot of thought has gone into trying to identify those particular topics that we need to cover in order to ease any type of anxiety or stress level from students. Lots of articulation going on between Kristen and the 7th grade teachers and Brian, the principal of Addison, with Kristen. And so we're working that out right now. And there'll be parent forums. I think the one parent forum for the 6th to 7th grade transition will happen on May 3rd. And so like they're also putting in like tours where students can come over from Gibbs to Addison and take tours of Addison. They're coordinating that with tours where the kids from 5th grade can go visit Gibbs, so there's some coordination going on there. And so they can actually see what it's like to be in a learning community from 5th to 6th grade, and also from those 6th graders going over to Addison.
I'm hearing very positive things from Gibbs parents about how well that program is going. What you're saying here is just a part of some really, really good stuff that's going on in the buildings, and I'm very appreciative of the leadership and the staff who's pulling this off.
What do you want to add?
The transition, I think that was the biggest concern when we decided to do the Gibbs. So there is the transition planning for students, which Dr. McNeil was talking about. There's also been a lot of transition planning for special education in particular. But there's also transition for having 5th grade teachers be in 6th grade classes. And I know there's a plan for 7th grade teachers to go to Gibbs this year in different groups. The Gibbs, probably next year, we should probably have Gibbs teachers go to Addison, but so many of them had been there just a year or so ago, didn't seem that. So you've got everybody trying to make sure that there's a seamlessness between the levels. And then, of course, all of our curriculum leaders make sure that there's that vertical alignment to the standards that just, and then everybody's aware of it too. And that's challenging. It's very challenging for every teacher to know what comes before and after.
And just to add on, for the departments, we still have our department meetings, 6th, 7th, 8th grade on Tuesdays. So we still have the ability to pull them together as a group. So for us, we've met several times throughout the year as a whole entire 6th through 8th department.
And also, Brian Maringer comes to our curriculum leaders meetings, so he comes every time we have one, so he's able to discuss various topics that we need to cover, and transition is one of them.
Great.
All right, Dr. Seuss?
So I was looking through the standards that we got, I guess, the beginning of the fall, the objectives, right? And it's a dizzying array of redesign, revise, introduce, implement, pilot, develop, right? It's actually hard for us to really get a sense of what's really going on because it's, some very generalities. But I was actually wondering, how do we feel that the teachers are doing does it feel like, okay, this is just our new normal and everyone's comfortable with it? Or are people feeling like there's just a lot of changes going on?
There's a lot of changes, but we've tried to coordinate it. Some of the curriculum leaders have alluded to, like, we're trying to be strategic about it. So, for instance, if in 3rd grade we're introducing new units of study in reading, we will not implement something. So, and in math, that introduction of the new resource happened last year. So now this year, there's an introduction of a new units of study in reading. So we're trying to make sure that we're coordinating it so that the changes are not all happening in any particular grade level all at once. So that, a lot of that coordination and discussion goes on during our curriculum leaders meetings. And then we look out front and say how many, let's see what this is going to look like down the line. So make sure that we're coordinating and making sure that we're not hitting the teachers with so many changes at any particular grade level. So the curriculum leaders, those meetings where we meet together are always very valuable. And as Matt said, there's those times during early release where the curriculum leaders also meet with elementary grade level teachers and 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers and high school, the department meetings. So that's where we're able to.
So do we feel that teachers are being challenged but not overwhelmed, or is there sort of? Do we feel that teachers are being challenged but not overwhelmed?
At the elementary, there are always challenges because those teachers have to do many subjects, and we have like the new social studies standards, and we have the units of study in literacy. We had the writing, and now we have the reading. So there's always stuff for the elementary, and I think it's tougher for them. And that's why Dr. McNeil, was talking about are trying to manage the change so that there's scaffolded change for the grades, for each grade. So that's something that we're really conscious of. And it's why when Linda was talking about the third grade issues and whether, what tests we use, if we can use a test that's integrated with the learning that's going on so that teachers don't have yet another overlay, that just makes it so much, not easier, but just it makes so much more sense for everybody. So we're constantly trying to think of ways to not simplify, but make things be of a piece, because it's, and at the high school, I mean, I don't think it's as much of an issue.
Okay.
In the high school.
I would just like to add, because I'm in elementary classrooms all the time, that, I feel like we are trying really hard to manage it on the curriculum end, but in spite of our best efforts, it's been a really heavy load, heavy lift for elementary teachers, because it's been relentless, for the past 5 to 8 years, and we're not done yet, with the major overhauls. So we're doing our best, but I do think we really need to stay on top of that and support teachers as much as possible, because it's so much new, like every year. They haven't had a break for a long time. So I think it's good to keep that in mind. I appreciate that.
Which I'm going to put a plug in for my change to the elementary schedule, which gives them time during the day to meet as, a team in order to discuss the changes. So I think that time that we're able to integrate into the everyday will also help to alleviate that type of stress, so they'll have, time to collaborate, look at student work, look at student data, and then kind of get a handle on and work collaboratively in order to address the changes that are taking place.
Ms. Morgan?
It's every week, not every day, right?
I'm saying that the schedule that I am proposing, teachers they would be off at the same time, and so they would have it would be a common prep every day where grade level teams could meet to discuss those changes. The team time is once a week.
Got it.
Where they could work with coaches, building administrators, curriculum leaders. They could also collaborate. That would be once a week. But the common prep time, where a grade level will be off at the same time, happens every day.
All right, I have just one question, a couple comments. So in the objectives, there was also an objective to do a similar thing with curriculum B classes in science and physical science and biology. Is that happening, or can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's been a progression. Sorry. Yes, it's been a progression. We have already done that in our 9th grade introductory physical science, and we have started it for the first time this year in 10th grade biology, and we're trying to plan how to do it in chemistry. It's a little more difficult in chemistry because of the equipment and whatever. But yes, we're in the middle of that process as well, where we have our former B level physical science is now an A level.
But with co-taught support or some
with
co-taught support or some other support of the students?
Yes, it's co-taught.
Yeah.
And so is our biology. We aren't able at this moment to find co-teaching staff for chemistry.
Great.
So we're still working on
that. So obviously there's a lot of great work going on. And hopefully next year, when we get the objectives and we see all of that, we may want to actually get you in then to talk about what you're planning to do instead of at the end of the year hearing what you did do, because it's good for us to know what's being planned. So thank you all for putting this together. The DRA issue actually is tied into RTI more so than anything else, and the DRA being used as a criteria for RTI. And so I would like to have an agenda item on RTI. I don't think it's something that we've heard about for many years. So I know there's changes in math planned. So at some point, either the rest of the year or early in the fall, it would be great to hear about what we're doing in RTI, what the model is, how we plan to evolve that, and also whether DRA will continue to be the entry criteria in those early grades for that. So any other questions from the committee?
This is a very long presentation, and as Dr. McNeil said, we're not going to go through all the slides,
Yeah,
but I
you have
do
the
think
other-
you want to
Sure, yep.
hit a couple of things from the second objective.
The other objective.
Yes, which is about, this is around, centers on, basically on professional development. So I would like, Allison Elmer is going to discuss the work that has been done over the past year, past couple of years, on the course that we partner with Leslie Institute.
So, we've mentioned it quite a few times. Leslie has their Institute for Trauma Studies. However, they offer a certificate program, which is for graduate courses. And we've been starting 4 years ago. We started offering the courses on site, and we now have an entire cohort,
Allison.
24 teachers go through the entire 4-course series and receive the trauma-sensitive endorsement. And about 75 staff who have taken at least one of the courses. So we cycle through them each year. Generally, we'll offer course 1 and 2. The second year, we were able to offer course 3, and then we'll offer course 1 again. So the plan will be to continue with that as we go forward. It's through a very generous grant that Leslie has that allows it to be at a very low cost to the participant, and in this past year, AEF helped to offset that cost as well.
And then next up, we have Dr. David Perdente will talk about the work that we've done with Safe and Supportive Schools.
Thank you, Rod. And just to preface it, late in the fall, Bird asked me to meet with Rod and Kathy regarding keeping the momentum going for your Safe and Supportive Schools initiative and team. In my other consulting roles across the state, going into districts and schools, I have to tell you, Arlington really does have a very progressive and robust approach to thinking about safe and supportive schools. So I want to just mention that because I'm in many districts and many schools, and the way your administrative staff, but also your school staff thinks about the needs of your student is very forward-thinking. So I just want to give them kudos. With regard to what's been done in terms of goals and accomplishments this year, one of the goals was to have full representation from all buildings throughout the district, and we have met that goal. The team meets on a monthly basis. We share promising practices around SEL and other programs. We also conducted some trainings. We had some facilitative leadership trainings for building staff members. So these are folks who don't have authority within their buildings necessarily, and so, but they do have a leadership role around safe and supportive schools. So they need to have some influence with other staff members to try to move forward, move programs forward. So there was 2 trainings that were conducted, and I believe there was between 17 and 20 staff members who were trained in facilitative leadership. So really discussed a lot of things like technical versus adaptive leadership and how to make change occur within buildings. Finally, we've been really focusing on setting the conditions for internal capacity this year. We've collected a lot of data, and we're developing a communication strategy that incorporates various stakeholder viewpoints. We're also about to conduct a capacity assessment for the team to better understand what our needs are as a team in terms of just how we can move forward. So it's been a productive year this year so far.
And I would like to thank Dr. Perdente for working with us. He's done a fabulous job, like he said, by keeping the ball moving forward in Mrs. Bird's absence, because he's here as a request and to fill in for her in that capacity. So I also would like to thank a very talented, passionate team of curriculum leaders and directors. I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with such a talented bunch. They've accepted me over my last couple of years, and I've appreciated that. And basically, I try to find out what's the best way that I can support the work that they're doing, and in order to create, pathways for communication with building leaders, and also to really identify what are some of the distinct things that we need to do in order to support student learning. And so they're very knowledgeable, very talented, and they work very well together. So I appreciate all the work that they've done, and I also would like to absolutely thank all the wonderful teachers we have in our district, because all of the work that they've referred to during this presentation would not be possible without their support and their talents. So thank you very much for coming out tonight. Larry Weathers will be back to see us before the end of the school year. Matt Coleman and Denny Conklin will also come back, and so we'll have another. Oh, I'm sorry. And the literacy team, the literacy team will come back. Deb will bring the coaches, minus Linda, because she has a conflict, and that's why Linda graciously agreed to come tonight. But Deb will be back with the entire literacy team before the end of the year. So that concludes our presentation tonight. And the rest of the slides about goals 2 and 3 are in the PowerPoint. And I'm definitely happy to answer any questions or comments that you may have about that at future meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you. All right. I want to introduce our student rep who I neglected earlier, Victor. I'm going to get your last name wrong. Chelarov? Kelarok. Okay. He is a freshman at Arlington High School. He is, in addition to participating in student government, he's on the wrestling team. Thank you for joining us. If you have anything to add to our discussion, just raise your hand and I'll recognize you. And thanks for being here. So next we have the Arlington High School.
Yes. One of the things that you have been following very well all year long is the progression of where we are with the Arlington High School project. And this coming Monday night is really a very important night in this process. Our presenters who've been our key speakers at all of the different finance committee, all the various meetings that we've had this year are going to be presenting at town meeting. And I think we're ready to go on that, pretty much.
We're ready to go.
We're ready to go.
7 minutes?
No.
No, it's going to be a little longer than
Well,
that.
we have 5 presenters plus a video,
How long are you asking for?
50 minutes. The moderator told us to ask for 50 because there's 5 presenters.
50.
Plus
50.
50, yeah.
Yep. And what we.
Well, it's 7,
You might
it's
lose
6,
them.
6, 7 minute, 6, 7 minute, well, it's John's suggestion.
Yeah, but
It's
the
6
various
people,
voices.
7 minutes each.
Read the crowd, read the crowd.
It's a very big project. It's huge.
Yeah, I know.
And it's not something that can be encapsulated in a 7-minute presentation.
No.
No.
Not at all.
No.
But we thought that it would be important for you to see one of the next pieces that we have in the way of demonstrating what a little bit more detail to what the design of the school would look like. This is called a fly-through, and it's gone through a lot of iterations over the last couple of weeks. And we thought we'd let you see it tonight and before town meeting sees it on Monday night, and then we'll make it public on our website after that. But it will not be on the website until after town meeting. So I think we're ready to go. We're working on the audio part of this. But anyway, a fly-through gives you an idea of what the external and the internal of the school be. I will preface this to say that there is still a lot more design that's going to go on over the next year. Next year is a very important and as busy time in this project.
If we are successful on April 29th.
If we are successful.
June 11th.
And June 11th.
Sorry.
We have 2.
I think we're ready.
Say it 3 times.
So we're going to show that on Monday night. And I'm going to say a few words, just like a whole 50-minute presentation, then I wrap it up. Cindy Friedman's going to speak on behalf of the delegation, and then Brian Rearick is going to call the question. I'm not kidding.
I only have a babysitter till 10 o'clock, so
Good.
get it done.
All right, well,
Actually, I'm kind of serious about that last one.
All the conspiracy theorists are going
Yeah,
to be.
I wouldn't, but,
It's up to him.
yep. Okay. so-
anyway, it's,
Great. That awesome animation.
it is awesome.
Finally get to see. Yes, Victor. Oh, you need the mic over so they can hear you at home on TV.
I couldn't help but notice those like really high ceilings. What's the maximum student body capacity this school can hold?
So
Like
it's,
reasonably?
yes, so it's
Well-
designed for 1755, but the maximum is probably a few hundred higher than that.
1755.
That's a design number. I'm sorry, what did you say, Lynn?
It's designed for 1755, but because that's not programming all of the classrooms all the time, it could hold, I think Dr. Janger has said, a couple hundred more.
All right.
But I think the ceilings are highest in the first floor and not on the other floors. So.
What do you think?
Looks nice.
You'll get a teeny taste of it, hopefully.
What year are you?
I'm a freshman.
First year.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you're
so you might get a
so,
tiny taste.
Second semester, senior year. Are you in the theater? You in theater?
He's wrestling.
Wrestling, okay.
Yeah,
well,
it's not-
then-
it's not gonna
okay,
help.
Jim won't- yeah. Well, you go to a show and then you want to try it.
You'll have new science classrooms for second semester. Yeah.
All right,
So next is the monthly financial report.
So, tonight in front of you, I have attached online, there are the monthly financial reports for the period ending March 31st, 2019. They include the general fund report, the grant accounts report, and the revolving accounts report. On the general fund report, you have a report that shows you expenditures by object code with year-to-date expended across the top as with encumbrances, what we're projecting as additional encumbrances, and then a balance that will be remaining. Currently, we are projecting around $280,000 as a balance at the end of the year. And as we've discussed in the previous meetings, we're looking to at least propose to the school committee to put into the special education stabilization fund $250,000. In this general funds, we're also projecting some summer projects that we can start in June when school is let out. And once again, that surplus is mainly driven by special education balance for out-of-district tuition. The grants accounts reports, we are drawing down the funds as expected, and we're also expending in a timely manner. And the revolving funds report the expenditures and the revenues totals for each account, projecting a balanced revolving funds. Any questions? Yes.
Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, the one thing I just sort of noticed in going through this before is the motor vehicle repair. Is this something we need to be paying attention to either in our operations budget or it's 84802? Is this something we need to be paying attention to in either our operating budget, or is there capital expenditures that are lurking to solve that issue?
No, this is something that, yeah, we would have to, we don't have anything in the capital funding to cover any motor vehicle repair. But we do have revolving funds that possibly we could use to cover these type of expenditures, but we typically use those for more for projects for facilities. So
my question really is do we have aging motor vehicles that we need to throw more money into? Or do we have motor vehicles that are going to be replaced next year in the capital budget?
well, we do have vehicles that will be replaced in the capital budget for next year in FY20.
And are those the ones that are causing the boost in the repair costs?
That information I do not know, but I can get back to you.
Okay, yeah. I just want to know if it's something we need to pay attention to.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're right. We do need to pay attention to it. And in fact, it relates to fees, which we'll bring back in the fall. We try to take repairs of buses out of transportation. And we have had a very flat fee on our bus transportation. And so I think that's something we have to look at again, so that as these buses get used more, which has certainly been the case this year with Gibbs, that we are able to pay for their repairs.
Okay.
Yeah, no. And I think also, while we have this cycle on capital, they're fairly generous cycles in terms of the actual, the life of these buses.
But if we're using them more, the life may be
Right.
shortening?
Yes.
Vis-a-vis what the cost benefit is of keeping and fixing versus moving on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
It's,
Anything else? All right, great, thank you.
okay.
Superintendent's report is next.
My report. I have several things. Actually, the first thing I want to start with is today we had C-SPAN here, which was wonderful. And also our Congresswoman Catherine Clark came to honor students that had been selected, their video had been selected in a national contest. It's actually rather impressive how many people applied for this. It was over 6,000 students that were involved in this national contest. And while there were certainly winners, our two selections were honorable mention. So basically, there was actually, to be more specific, there was 6,318 students that were involved in this, and there were about half that number of projects, because there was a fair amount of collaboration. So this was rather impressive that 2 Arlington videos were selected. And actually, one of the questions that they asked me today, and one of the students as well, is, well, how did you learn all these techniques of creating a movie? Because these were students in a government class, and one of the things that I want to give credit to ACMi, who is here tonight filming this, but they are also tremendous supporters of our students. As you know, across the street, they have a studio, as well as the one up on Park Ave. And we have students that go over there for internships, and these students that created this video worked with Kevin at ACMi and had full use of their equipment in order to make these videos, and they were very professionally done. I will send you the links. We thought about possibly showing one tonight in which Ms. Seuss was a star. One of the videos was on local governments, and the class focuses on federal and state government, but the question was, well, how does local government really work and be part of this whole system that we have? And the students interviewed Ms. Seuss and also our town manager, Adam Chapelain, and it was a great video.
I was going to say, I've known Michael for several years because he's friends with my son. This is an impressive kid. This kid is going to go. He's a
He
super
was very impressive today in his remarks. You have it up. Would you like to see it?
Yeah,
There's-
sure.
Okay, they're about 7 minutes long. They're they're quite good. They're very good.
The 10th Amendment of the Constitution reads, "The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people."
This amendment is a significant piece of one of the most influential parts of the U.S. government system, the federalist system and federalism. The federal system that the U.S. government works under gives the federal government supreme authority over some topics like national defense or international commerce, and it gives the states supreme authority over other topics like redistricting the U.S. House of Representatives or conducting elections. Now, we all know about the president and members of Congress in Washington, D.C., and most of us know who our governor is and where our state capital is and what our state capitol building looks like. But what about our local government? There are roughly 89,000 local government bodies in the U.S., and we...
It's going fine.
No, it's playing like double time.
It was faster before. It might be 1.25 now.
It's a fast-talking kid.
No.
Amendment of the Constitution reads,
I don't know where
"The
it
power
is.
is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people."
This amendment is a significant piece of one of the most influential parts of the U.S. government system, the federalist system and federalism. The federal system that the U.S. government works under gives the federal government supreme authority over some topics like national defense or international commerce, and it gives the states supreme authority over other topics like redistricting the U.S. House of Representatives or conducting elections. Now, we all know about the president and members of Congress in Washington, D.C., and most of us know who our governor is and where our state capital is and what our state capitol building looks like. But what about our local government? There are roughly 89,000 local government bodies in the U.S., and we, the citizens of the United States, vote in local officials every year. But asking around, I couldn't find anyone who could tell me the names of my town selectmen. I've never seen television ads for members of my town school committee, and I've never seen any of the members of my town meeting speak at any national party conventions. So how are these governments made up of our next-door neighbors fitting into the federalist system of the United States? What do? And why should we care? I did some research, and I asked around to get some answers.
At the local government level, even if you're setting policy, even if you're setting budgets, everything you do has an immediate impact on the residents in your community. The best part about local government is that you take actions and you can immediately see the impact of those actions. So many of the services that hopefully we take for granted, because if they're being done well, we take them for granted, are performed by local government. Your trash being picked up, your roads, your sidewalks, your schools, your police department, your fire department, and well beyond that are all provided by local government. And again, if those things are all operating fine, you probably don't think about them very much, but they are actually very complex and difficult to run. And it's local government managers and local government elected officials that help make those run appropriately and create a community and a place where people can feel safe and have a good quality of life.
We deliver services on behalf of state government with the local representatives that actually talk to people, that provide the social services, that operate the jail, that run the county roads.
Frankly, if you're a mayor, nobody cares what your party is. They care what you're getting done. You don't have time for a lot of bluster and baloney. Your constituents expect results.
Now we have a grasp on the authority and duties of local government. But how do local governments interact with higher levels of government in the federalist system?
So we regularly talk to state government, both the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the legislature about both general government aid and school funding that comes from the state to help cities and towns. So that's probably my biggest interaction with state government in general. More specifically with our local legislative delegation, annually during the budget process, we'll talk to them about some local priorities that they might be able to have funded in the state budget. And then if there's any legislative priorities that we'd like to see passed, if there's laws that we're interested in that are being considered, we'll interface with our state senator and our 2 state reps. But again, generally, it's mostly about finances and what we can convince state government to do to help out local government.
Although local government's interaction with state bureaucracy is interesting, as a public school student, I am also curious to learn about local government's role in providing a quality education for me and my classmates. To get some answers, I talked to a member of the school committee.
The school committee is like the board, so it's similar to a board of directors. So we are responsible for financial oversight over the school budget. We're responsible for policies, and we evaluate, hire, and fire the superintendent. we have oversight. We make sure that that money is spent correctly. We make sure that the budget items are right, that they're not wildly out of bounds. And we have oversight over policy, and it's very similar. We can initiate things, but we also look to the superintendent and her team as well. So why should people care? Well, actually, people care passionately about this, despite the fact that very few people vote, because it's their children. And so one of the things I actually like doing is talking to parents who are very upset. I mean, I don't like that they're upset. I'm happy for that they're upset, that something's not working for them or that for their child. But I like hearing that, and I like helping when I can, because there's nothing more important to people than their children, as I'm sure you can imagine. I think there's a lot more interest in local government because, in truth, we can't actually affect very much of what goes on the national level, right? I mean, but we can potentially affect what goes on the state level. Each state representative represents 40,000 people. That person lives in your town, lives near you. School committee members, right? We're at large people, we're representing 40,000 people. Town meeting members represent 2,000 people. And so you can actually, walk up to the person's house and talk to them. So we've seen a lot more interest.
People don't realize just how much of an impact the federal system's levels of government have on them. People ignore their municipal government because it's not noticeable, but it's not supposed to be. But if it didn't exist, major aspects of Americans' everyday lives, the basic services we all count on, would be left unattended. The grand rotundas of the State House and the Capitol building are not the greatest symbols of American republicanism. The spirit of our self-government lies rather atop the worn steps of Town Hall.
Do you want to see this, the other one? Yeah. Yeah. Can you pull the other one up too, Rod?
A date which will live in infamy.
I do not intend to step aside at anyone's request.
The feminists.
No, everybody in America wants civil rights.
Illegal immigrants.
Let me answer the question.
The news media has always been an important part of American society. Ever since small newspapers started out in colonial America, media has been used to gain information and also become socialized to new ideas. After the American Revolution, these small papers were controlled by political parties. The political parties used these papers to spread their ideas. Unfortunately, these ideas did not spread far. Right after the Revolution, the majority of Americans were still illiterate. But fast forward to the 1830s, and many people could now read. This led to the creation of the penny press and the advent of journalism. By the beginning of the 20th century, there was more competition among news sources. Yellow journalism became popular because journalists figured out that sensationalism sold well. As news media continued to evolve, there was the invention of things such as the radio and the TV, which revolutionized the ability for political figures to communicate directly with their constituents. Freedom of the press is guaranteed in the First Amendment of the Constitution. This is so that the government cannot regulate any form of public opinion.
The reason that we are written into the First Amendment, the freedom of the press, in addition to the freedom of speech, alongside the free exercise of religion, is that we are necessary to hold accountable the people in power.
Today, there are new mediums that provide us with information. Some examples are social media, blogs, or online news sources. These new mediums allow politicians to better engage with their constituents and also allow the public to share different points of view with each other. But should news sources and social media be regulated to ensure that the information released is factually correct and not driven by hate? The internet makes news easy to manipulate and allows for the expression of all perspectives. Due to the ease of sharing and editing news, there has been a rise in what some people call fake news.
The definition is a little bit easier, and that is news that is presented so it looks like it's coming from a real news source. So, but that's how academics defined it as this problem emerged. President Trump has sort of ruined that academic definition because to him fake news is what he doesn't like, and other people on either side have now sort of adopted this more generic view that it's news that comes from sources that you regard as disreputable, as as opposed to the news sites that you actually like.
Media outlets like CNN and MSNBC are fake news. Fake news.
Many people are also calling for social media sites such as Twitter to take down hateful content such as messages of xenophobia or anti-Semitism. Even though we have transitioned from a phase in history when political parties controlled the news, today news sources have a tendency to be partisan to some degree, which has angered many people and politicians alike.
I believe when you have analyses that say 92% of the coverage is anti-Trump, there's something really profoundly wrong.
Often, people from one side of the political spectrum will point to media sources that have a different partisan lean as being fake or unreputable.
But when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people.
While the internet and social media especially can divide people along their party lines, it can also bring up new perspectives. Social media allows people to connect with others that they may not have been able to connect with otherwise.
We actually are able to, I would say, find a more diverse group of voices through social media. What's nice about social media is that it does give many different people a voice, and they're able to draw attention to issues that maybe we wouldn't have found out about if it wasn't for their Twitter account or things like that.
At the end of the day, the news is a necessary part of our lives. Overall, the media's intention is not to trick the people. The news helps us as American citizens be more informed on what's going on around us.
So I would say one thing that I think is important to know is that journalists are all, we're not out here to deceive people. Journalists go into this industry because we want to be sure that we're bringing the most, accurate information to people as quickly as possible. And when I say that, I don't mean that journalists are perfect. Journalists make mistakes all the time. But the difference is that journalists make mistakes, they own up to those mistakes, and they correct them immediately.
Right now, the internet presents new, modern challenges in how we consume news and information, and it will continue to play a large role in American democracy and our lives.
Consuming the news takes time, and so you have to be willing. That's the bigger question: is will you do the work of being a serious citizen? And if you're committed to doing that, then the news is easy to find.
Okay. I want to commend these students.
Great
Let me
job.
say their names. Yes. So the students that did the locally sourced government were Michael Graham Green, Hikaru Koga, and Samuel Monks. The students that did the evolution of modern news were two students, Serena Bernstein and Mia Umali. So congratulations to these students. They really made Arlington High School and all of us very proud of them, and it really was quite an honor to be selected for this honor. I mean, really, they were chosen among a whole national group, and to have two from the same high school is terrific. And I also, well, Mr. Levy is here, I want to congratulate the team this year from both Gibbs and Addison, who did so well in the history competition as well. Well, this year we didn't go to nationals, but we had quite a few teams, 6 teams, right? Or was it 7?
Gibbs had 2 teams, 2 projects representing its states, and Addison had 9. And Addison, we had 3 special awards and 3 third-place finishes, and only the top 2 made it national, so we came close.
We came very close. Well, anyway, it's such a great learning experience for them, and the work you do there really prepares the students so well. We're talking about vertical alignment.
It was great to see Serena was a former National History Day participant for 2 years. So it was great to see this.
Right, they really delve into these topics well, and weren't afraid to take on some very controversial topics, especially in the second video. So you can see where your work leads to. So congratulations. We were going to have 2 of our students that are here visiting. We have 24 students from Nagakyoko. Did I say that right, Mr. Schlickman?
Nagaokakyo. It's tough. It's tough. They
It's
add
really tough.
syllables.
They had syllables. Well, this is our annual visit. We have 4 chaperones. And since this is our 35th year, the mayor is also coming. He wasn't able to come with the students, but he is coming tomorrow.
Good.
Yeah, he'll be here, and he will, there's a lot of events planned for this weekend, and then there's going to be a dinner honoring the mayor on Sunday night, and then he will be at Addison on Monday morning, as well as the high school here on Tuesday. So we're thrilled. It's tomorrow. The students that are here will go to Brackett, and they have a very, very full schedule. So we're very pleased this year. I'm sorry they weren't able to come tonight, and they will be gone by the time we have the next meeting. So hopefully, if you're around, you're most welcome to come to any of the presentations at the schools. They usually start around 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock. The one at the high school starts at 10 o'clock, and so you're most welcome to come. The Addison play is coming up next weekend. They're doing Mary Poppins, and so if you have children, grandchildren that you'd like to go out with for an evening or an afternoon, there's a production Friday night at 7, and then there's 2 on Saturday at 2 and at 7. And tickets are on sale right now. One thing that I just do want to mention, I don't want to delve in it too much, but there was I know this, you're aware of the fact that there was a question on the MCAS, because it's been in the Globe, that was probably not thoroughly thought out in terms of what the effect it could have even had on the students who were taking the test. And the association that I belong to, school superintendents, have been talking with Commissioner Riley. And as you know, that question will not be scored this year. But it just brings up a lot of questions as to what should have been the writing prompt. We have not had any students really have come forth here in the high school, from what I understand, to really talk about it. But at the same time, truthfully, teachers aren't really supposed to look at MCAS. So the only way we can really know the content on the test is when students report to us, because that's actually one of the rules that you administrators and teachers are not to look at it. So it was unfortunate, but I did want you to know that it's something that is being addressed. And I know that there's one of the other school committees in the area, was it Somerville?
Somerville, yeah.
Yeah. Has made a statement about this as well. And you had wanted to talk about that.
Came up, okay. Andre Green is a friend of mine. He's on the Somerville School Committee, and he's brought forth a resolution pertaining to the problematic essay question. They have passed a resolution. They forwarded it to us, and he asked if we'd want to pass a resolution crafting it in our language and to send a similar message. Obviously, this is something that we can't discuss tonight because it's not on the agenda. So I've asked the chair to go and add this to the agenda for next week. The other thing is, if I can divert into a new business frame of mind, that MASC sends out a packet to everybody, and it's also online, including nominations for awards and resolutions for the delegate assembly. As you know, that in the fall we take a look at the delegate assembly resolutions that others have submitted and offer our opinion on them, and there have been times that we've submitted a resolution. Now, I'm a representative of MASC on the Accountability and Assistance Advisory Council. I replaced some guy who decided he'd rather chair the Arlington Building Committee, who I appointed when I was president of MASC. So, I mean, it was really sort of serendipitous to go and follow in his shoes. But one of the they had a big presentation about the difficulty of finding minority teachers in Massachusetts. And this is the Department of Education talking to us, saying that one of the big barriers to getting minority candidates, because they're coming from out of state, is our licensure requirements and the testing requirements. And there's nothing particularly valid about the Massachusetts teacher licensure test. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking something we could do potentially, if it's the will of the committee, is to come up with a resolution that would state that professional educators and people involved in the business who are now blocked from serving on the committee that determines the licensing requirements, that we should be the ones to govern our own license, and that we should get rid of a test that is a barrier, that is not a reliable measure of good teaching practice. So I'd also like potential MASC resolutions to be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. Are you going to write something up?
I can, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
we can look at first. Okay. Yeah, good to see it.
Because the resolution from Somerville just was emailed to me this morning.
Okay.
Andre communicated with me and said, gee, you want to do something like this from Arlington? We did this in Somerville.
Got it, okay.
And so I said,
Take a look at it.
well, let's bring it forth to the committee. And then the council meeting a couple of weeks ago really put me in a frame of mind for this. So I think it's a worthwhile position for us to be thinking about, because, every other profession in the Commonwealth, the people who govern the profession are members of the profession. And we are legally banned from serving on the Board of Elementary and Secondary. Our student rep could. You could be a voting member of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, but we cannot, by virtue of the fact that we're school committee members, or anyone who's working as a professional educator is also banned from serving on this board. And this has been a bone of contention for a long time, and I think it's about time that we pushed even harder on this.
We'll put it on the agenda. Mm-hmm. I will also send all of you the link to the letter that was sent, so you can read it from MASS to the commissioner. Mm-hmm. On that topic of improving the diversity of our staff is something that we focus on quite a bit. And I did mention before we had the coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say we had our Mass Partnership for Diversity in Education meeting just yesterday, and this was a topic yesterday. It's a frequent topic of discussion at our meetings that many of the districts in our membership and in Massachusetts, the leaders in the districts, the HR people, are frustrated by that as well.
As our superintendents. In fact, that was a topic at a recent roundtable, is how we are all going to address this issue more than we have. Anyway, it's a topic we can talk about some more down the road.
Can I
one other thing?
Speak to the MCAS question a little bit more? So my understanding was that the MCAS question that the resolution is about is not the only problematic question that was on this MCAS. I also received parent complaints about an open response question on the 10th grade MCAS, which required students to write an essay defending the sexist rejection of a woman who was qualified for a job and was denied because she was a woman. And it didn't sound, from what I understood, it wasn't on everyone's MCAS, so it's probably a test question.
Yeah, that would be a test question. Yeah.
But it's still...
It's a similar idea.
It's not a great question for many reasons, and it again opens the question of how are they picking these things. So I'm just, I think maybe can we have whatever we put be more broad than just that specific question.
Yeah, well, one of the, I'm not sharing, I didn't print out the Somerville resolution, but the thing is that in Somerville, what they're saying is, okay, you are now tossing this question. Does two things. One, it changes the metric of the underlying test. And two, it potentially traumatizes students so that they are not able to perform as well as they could. So that what they're looking for in Somerville is a hold harmless for anyone who took this test, so that anyone who was in the 10th grade this year taking that test would not be denied a diploma on the basis of this test.
Okay.
Right, there's, we've talked about this, the issue of stereotype threat and the effect that that can have on performance. There's just been multiple studies done throughout the last decade in different universities, and it is real. It's real in terms of performance for women on math. It's real for people of color in terms of their performance. So it's hard to know, and we won't know what the true performance was across the state. I think that's one of the things that's a huge problem in this whole thing. It's not as simple as they're not scoring that question. It's what the effect of the question had on the students who were taking the test. So I'm not sure how the department is going to address it. The commissioner is going to be at the superintendent's spring conference in a couple weeks, and I'm sure that he will be asked to address it. One last thing, and that goes back to the high school. There is going to be another community forum. We've now had 8, I think. This will be our 9th. Community forum on May 21st. It's a Tuesday evening at Town Hall. And again, it's just it's an informational session about the building project. And probably a lot of what was presented Monday night will also be presented again at that forum for those that can't be at town meeting or not watching. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the committee so requests, in which event the item will be considered in its normal sequence. Approval of warrant number 19201 dated 4/11/2019. Total warrant amount 732,555.86. Approval of minutes, none. Approval of trip, none. Approval of the Ida Robbins Scholarship for 2019 presented to the top 2 AHS students with the highest GPA. Approval of the E. Nelson Blake Book Award given to the top 12 students with the highest GPA. AHS Awards Night will be held on Thursday, May 30th, 2019 at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. Subcommittee and liaison reports. Budget.
Budget has nothing to report at this time.
Community relations.
No, I've dropped the ball, but I will pick it up.
Bye. CIA.
Also nothing.
Facilities. Bill is not here. Policies and procedures.
I wouldn't expect much of anything until after we clear town meeting season. However, there is an online poll for the Hardy Playground from that community. So if you are interested in the Hardy Playground, if you're in the neighborhood or a Hardy parent, I encourage you to participate.
Arlington High Building Committee, we've already discussed.
We discussed it.
Any liaison reports or announcements? We have 2 future agenda items. Any other additional future agenda items? Nope. All right. Now we move on to executive session.
Oh,
All right, go ahead.
no, I'll send an email. Never mind. I got an agenda item in the future. Okay.
Executive session.
Yes, okay.
To conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with union and/or non-union personnel, or contract negotiations with union and/or non-union, in which, if held in an open meeting, may have a detrimental effect. To conduct strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, in which, if held in an open meeting, may have a detrimental effect. Collective bargaining may also be conducted. Discuss contract of AEA Clerical Unit C.
Are
we returning, or?
No.
No. Okay. So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
It's tied.
You all.
Yeah, 3-3.